Breaking news, J.J. Watt is going to the desert. He is signing with the Arizona Cardinals, a reported 2-year deal worth $31 million, about $23 million of that guaranteed. He's going to be reuniting with former Texans star DeAndre Hopkins. And J.J. Watt broke that news himself. Here it is. Source, me, because there were some interesting reports earlier in the day about a fake J.J. Watt Peloton account saying that the Bills, the Browns, and the Packers were the 3 favorites. But no, he faked this all out, going to Arizona to join the Cardinals, a team that just missed the postseason this past season, 8-8 overall. So let's get reaction. Got Jonathan Jones in here, from one J.J. to the other. J.J., why did J.J. Watt ultimately decide to go to Arizona? This surprises a lot of us, I think, around the NFL.
It certainly does surprise a lot of us around the NFL, and I've been texting with folks around the league all day about J.J. Watt, but even in the moments since he broke his own news, and one league source told me, thought he cared about winning. Another league source said to me, must have been about the money. You look at it, a 2-year, $31 million deal with $23 million guaranteed. That guaranteed money was really what had been considered to be the top of his market for the teams that are in contention for a conference championship. So we're talking about Tennessee, Buffalo, Green Bay. Pittsburgh really didn't have that kind of money. Cleveland. And so that's why we all had narrowed it down to those teams, because the thought was that J.J. Watt would want to be with a bona fide winner. Well, listen, the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think they're a J.J. Watt away from going to the NFC title game. They're 8-8. They have a lot of holes to fill and a lot of things to learn from last season, and really their collapse there at down the stretch. I think it sort of spells the end of Hassan Reddick in Arizona. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But you pair J.J. Watt with Chandler Jones in a division, the most competitive division in football, one that has some pretty quality quarterbacks, certainly Russell Wilson and now Matthew Stafford there. And we're going to see what the San Francisco 49ers do. But from an Arizona Cardinals standpoint, it certainly makes a lot of sense. From a J.J. Watt standpoint, you certainly could have gone to another team that is better positioned to win a Super Bowl ring, or at least get to the Super Bowl, if you take less money. But as it had been told to me a couple of weeks ago, the longer this drags out, the more with J.J. Watt it will be about the money. Because if he wanted to go out and win a championship with one of these ready-made contenders, he would have signed a week ago.
Sportsline has upped the numbers for the Cardinals to make the postseason next season from 49% to about 58.5%, just from the signing of J.J. Watt. Now, you know, you could talk all you want about what this does for the Cardinals. What does J.J. Watt have left? We know he's one of the best defensive linemen we've seen in a generation, but just one Pro Bowl in his last 5 seasons. He turns 32 years old this month. What's left, J.J.?
You know, sources that I'd spoke with said really as soon as he got released from the Texans, listen, he can still play. There's no doubt about it. Is he the 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year? Still, no, he's not. And that's just what happens with age. And that's what happens when injuries mount, as they have the last couple of years. But when he's healthy, he can still absolutely be a force. And, you know, his resume and his name recognition probably caused that number to go up a little bit. Be very, very fascinated, Chris, to see the structure of this deal and just how much of that $31 million is real, how guaranteed the $23 million in guarantees actually is. Again, that was something that had been harped on to me by multiple sources, that JJ, wherever he goes, is certainly going to care about how large that number is, because he doesn't want to be viewed as some washed-up pass rusher. You know, are his best days behind him? Sure, but he can still go out there and produce so long as he is healthy. And I would hope for the Arizona Cardinals' sake that they have protected themselves with any number of incentives in the deal, so that if and when he does miss some time, that they're not doling out a whole bunch of money for someone who can't go out there and play. But again, they just dealt with this last year with Chandler Jones and had Hassan Reddick step up. Now they get J.J. Watt, pair him with Chandler Jones. I can't imagine Chandler Jones is going to go anywhere, because as we all just saw in Super Bowl 55, if you're going to compete, you have to be able to get after the quarterback. And I think whether the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave out the blueprint to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not necessarily saying that, but if you have two premier pass rushers, or at least a blue chip pass rusher and a guy who used to be, who can still capture that magic every now and then, you're going to be better positioned to compete for a championship. That's what the Arizona Cardinals are banking on.
Those two guys have the most combined sacks in the NFL since 2012. Jones with 97, Watt with 95.5, now joining forces in the desert in Arizona. You know, there was a DeAndre Hopkins Photoshop that was making the rounds around a week ago, I think, and Hopkins, here it is, saying, you know, let's get back together. Let's finish what we started in Houston. Hopkins, of course, traded to the desert last offseason. I think some of us just kind of dismissed it like, oh, yeah, that's funny. That's a good Photoshop, but he's not really going to go to Arizona. How much do you think DeAndre Hopkins had to do with this decision, if at all?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, I think the money was sort of at the root of this, and based off what I've spoken to with folks. And listen, J.J. Watt, go out there and get your money. Just because you've gotten paid a couple of times doesn't mean that you can't go out there and get paid again in your first time as a free agent. He certainly was indulging in all of the free agency rumors and whatever cryptic messages and haikus that he was posting on his social media pages. All that was fun, fine, and fair, but I think at this point we understand, especially with the reported 2-year, $31 million, that's what this was about, him actually getting up to an average of $15.5 million per year, where the teams that I had spoken to who appeared to be in competition for Watt said, I don't think there's going to be any chance he gets to that. And, you know, I was talking with folks who thought it would be somewhere between $10 and $12 million, and then you start, you know, stacking the incentives on there. So I think that's why we're all surprised again by the Arizona Cardinals being the team, because they are not best positioned to compete for a championship like a Pittsburgh or Green Bay, Cleveland, Tennessee, Buffalo. Again, they're not just one player away from getting there. But, you know, did DeAndre Hopkins encourage him a little bit? Did J.J. Watt do his due diligence and ask Nuke, hey, what's it like over there, and what's it like playing for Cliff, et cetera, et cetera? Sure, I hope that he did. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at, was this about chasing a ring or was this about getting a big contract, I certainly think that the Arizona Cardinals offered him the largest contract, while they did not and do not offer him the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl.
And the Cardinals have confirmed the news. Welcome to the Valley, J.J. Watt, they tweeted. We've agreed to terms with J.J. on a 2-year contract. Jonathan Jones with us as J.J. Watt breaks the news himself. Source, me. No Photoshop needed. J.J. Watt not on a Peloton, but doing some squats at the rack in an Arizona Cardinals.
Now, unlike several deals when they come out, leaked by the media or announced by the team themselves, J.J. Watt took it upon himself to announce the news, tweeting out, source me, with a picture of him with a Cardinals shirt on. All right, so the Cardinals missed the postseason this past year, went 8-8. So what are their chances now to make it with J.J. Watt? Sportsline, they've already updated their numbers, going from just about 49% before the signing of J.J. Watt to now 58%, 58.5%, I should say. Let's welcome in senior NFL writer Pete Prisco to talk about this. This took a lot of us by surprise, Pete. J.J. Watt to the Cardinals.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise because, you know, people had speculated. There had been a lot of speculation on Buffalo, Green Bay, maybe Tennessee. I texted somebody in Arizona and said, J.J. Watt, huh? And he went, boom. They're excited about it. And I'll tell you why they're really excited about it. J.J. Watt is a great teammate. What he does kind of bleeds over to a lot of younger players, and there's a lot of younger players on that defensive line. You know, guys like Lawrence, a rookie last year, didn't play that well. They have a couple other younger players on that defensive line, so I think that will help from that standpoint. And they were 25th in the league against the run last year in yards per attempt. You can't win a lot of games with that kind of leaky run defense. So all in all, I think it's a pretty solid signing for the Cardinals.
All right, so a solid signing for the Cardinals. But with J.J. Watt, I mean, we saw him outspoken against the Texans during the season, saying his teammates needed to step up. And it seemed like when he announced that he wanted to leave, it was to win. It was to win now. But he's not necessarily going to get that for the Cardinals. So did he follow the money more so than a team that's going to win?
Well, I think the Cardinals are on the cusp of it. Remember, they were right there smack dab in the middle of the playoff race. If they win their final game, they get in, and they didn't. So they just missed out. So they're right there in that division. I mean, you look at Seattle. You have the Russell Wilson situation going on there. Will he be their quarterback? I think he will be, but that's a little bit in flux with the new offensive coordinator. You have a new quarterback with the Rams and Matt Stafford, and they're going to have a lot of holes to fill as well. And then you go to San Francisco, who's going to be the quarterback there, and they are also coming off a disastrous season. So there is a chance to be a team that can push for the division title. You have to get better on defense. It starts with J.J. Watt, but they need more help. There's a lot of guys who are free agents on that roster. Hassan Reddick, their leading sacker from a year ago, unrestricted free agent. Patrick Peterson, veteran corner, unrestricted free agent. So they have some decisions to make on defense, but they have to get better on that side of the ball, and I think J.J. Watt will help that.
When we saw Tom Brady go to the Bucs, we saw a lot of other players want to go play with him. Obviously, this is not Tom Brady. This is J.J. Watt, still a phenomenal player. Filling those holes on defense, is that a little bit easier now with him there?
I think it'll help. When you have a player like J.J. Watt and everybody knows who he is and they know his work ethic, I think that can help you maybe lure some guys in. But I think they first have to look at their own guys. When you look at that defense, who are the playmakers on that defense? Yeah, Chandler Jones, when he's healthy, is a dynamic pass rusher. Reddick had a good year last year, unrestricted free agent. Can you bring him back? The linebacker group is in flux. Isaiah Simmons, their their first-round pick last year, flashed at times, but needs to be better. And Budda Baker's a heck of a player. But aside from that, there are a lot of question marks, and those guys need to step up. Young rookies like Lawrence, who was a struggling guy a year ago, needs to be better in the middle. And then Zach Allen, another player who's starting to improve. Those guys need to step up, but they need to fill some holes. So, yeah, J.J. Watt can be a guy who can bring in some free agents, or at least try to bring him in, because cap-wise, it's always tough to do sometimes.
Talking about his performance specifically, though, and now what it means to the defense, I mean, when J.J. Watt is healthy, that's one thing. We have seen him deal with a lot of injuries over the past couple of years. How much, if he is healthy, does he elevate this defense?
When he's healthy, he's still a good player. He's not the old J.J. Watt by any stretch of the imagination. He'd probably be the first one to tell you that. The guy was, for a 3 or 4 year period, was as dominant as any defensive player we've seen in this league. Injuries have taken a toll on his body. He's still an effective player. He played 16 games last year. That hasn't happened a lot in the last 5 or 6 years, so that's a good step for him. Can he be a dominant player like he was? Probably not. Can he be a really good player? Absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to the Tom Brady syndrome. When you bring a guy like that into your building, everything he does kind of spreads throughout the building. Young guys who might not put in the work, if those guys aren't there, because you can only listen to the coach so much. They see him doing it, then they do it. So I think from that standpoint, it will be good for the Arizona Cardinals.
J.J. Watt leaving the Texans, joining the Cardinals, reunited with his former teammate of the Texans, DeAndre Hopkins. Pete, the Cardinals play the Texans next season. How do you see that going?
Well, this Texans team is in flux, and that's being kind. Let's be blunt about it. They're a mess right now. What are they going to do with the quarterback position? Is Deshaun Watson going to be there? Even if he is, they have all kinds of problems on that roster. They don't have a lot of assets. They have a new coach. They have a new general manager. They're in a bad situation. So if you ask me right now, Arizona's going to win that game.
All right, Pete Prisco, thanks so much for hopping on with us here. This breaking news. J.J. Watt signing with the Cardinals. He does, in fact, have a new team. By the way, you can hear much more from Pete Prisco. Of course, this will be worthy of an emergency podcast there for our guys on the Pick Six podcast. That is our podcast, all things NFL. Make sure to download and subscribe. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.